Welcome, and happy Halloween, everybrony. We've got a pretty special video for you today. It's gonna be something more personal than a lot of my other content, since I'm really talking about my own experiences here. We won't be getting into any major pony stuff for a majority of this, I'm sorry to say. But you guys probably know what this whole childhood trauma thing is. A years-old trend where YouTubers go and talk about the stuff from movies, TV shows, books, games that scared them as a kid. It combines the whole idea of, oh, nostalgia, childhood, whatever, with scary or not even that scary content, just Halloween type stuff. Also, it's cool to hear stories from people about their experiences as a kid. This type of video is something I've wanted to do ever since March of last year. Since that time, I've been jotting down random things that would freak me out. Some are memories I had buried deep down too. With all the material we've got, I think it's best we split this up into 3 parts. I think I can divide it up pretty easily. Part 1 will be when I was really young. Part 2 when I actually started to get into video games and watching things like Cartoon Network, so elementary school. And part 3 is going to be internet stuff, late elementary and early middle school, because trust me, the internet has a lot of you know what. That being said, this video is going to go over part 1. So welcome to childhood trauma. Now, I'm using the term childhood trauma, but there's obviously a big difference between an actual traumatic incident that happens when you're a kid and seeing a scary episode of a TV show. For that reason, I'm not going to be using the word trauma too much here because, you know. Also, no trigger warnings for any of the stuff I'm going to talk about right now in this video, at least here because I was like 3. Nothing here is too graphic or intense, so don't worry. When you're that little, a lot of things can be really disturbing to you, especially if you're not exposed to anything super intense yet. I know that's the case for me because one common thread a lot of my childhood media scares share is characters simply being in distress. Now, I was a PBS Kids kid. I was raised on Arthur, Sesame Street, and all those others. I was just in the right era where they had a lot of good stuff going on. Of course, the classics, but also stuff like Word Girl, the Electric Company reboot, Cyber Chase, and Between the Lions. This one was a lot of fun. Imagine Sesame Street, but with furries, and in a library. Now, when you mention the show in relation to childhood trauma, most people think of the Smarty Pants guy, but honestly, I was okay with that. I never had any trouble with puppets when I was little. Even animatronics at theme parks or Chuck E. Cheese I could live with. Okay, apparently I cried one time when we went to a Bugaboo Creek and all the animals on the wall started singing, but come on, you can understand that. According to my mom, the original Rudolph special from the 60s made me cry, but again, you can understand that. And Sid the Science Kid too. Like, I like the show eventually, but those designs, when you see them for the first time, yeah. But Between the Lions, the one thing that got to me was the cliffhanger segments. Yes, really. Not that Cliffhanger himself was scary, but the idea of him being trapped there and never being able to come down. And he's like, can't hold on much longer. I didn't like that at all. Later I warmed up to it, obviously. Between the Lions is one of my favorite shows in that era. But the first time, it was genuinely distressing. Moving on is Curious George. To this day, probably my favorite PBS Kids show. It's just such a wholesome show. And since George is, curious, they teach kids about, everything. Tons of different subjects. It really felt like more than a show meant to get kids to remember that 8 is after 7. Curious George was the favorite when I was a kid, so I watched a lot of episodes, including a few that had scenes I didn't like. The one where he and Betsy and Steve go to the fair and ride the roller coaster. There's a flashback where the man in the yellow hat, he loses his hat and it gets eaten by a dog. Again, 3-year-old me thought that was really scary. Another where George has to help this kid, Bill, get all his bunnies back in a cage. There's a fantasy sequence where he's crying about losing the bunnies, and I hated this. It made me so uncomfortable. I've said this in a video before, but it made me so uncomfortable when characters on TV or in movies would cry for whatever reason. Not just having tears in their eyes, but when they're full-on vocalizing it. It was this scene right here, the opening for the movie Robots, and the trailer for My Little Pony, A Very Minty Christmas. Yeah. My first exposure to MLP as a franchise was seeing Minty crying after knocking over that stupid candy cane and running out of the room because that's how much I hated to see it. It was weird. I don't know, shows where people would cry normally, like Caillou or Peppa Pig, didn't really bother me, so I guess it was when it caught me off guard. I don't know. It would always be in the cutesy slice of life shows where the trauma stuff would happen. People would be in danger on Thomas the Tank Engine and Word Girl all the time. But that was fine because I was expecting it. I just wanted to have a fun time with Curious George, but suddenly we were sobbing and holding on for our lives, okay. I remember even that song about the meatball that falls out the spaghetti. It gave me that same feeling. Why are we singing about tragedy in preschool? The idea of imminent danger or getting caught in a place they shouldn't be was one thing too I remember. The Curious George movie had a part where he's in this lady's apartment and blowing bubbles and stuff, and I don't know, maybe the lady scared me, but I wasn't a fan of that, because he's gonna get caught! And not PBS, but Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. The episode where he goes up the beanstalk was kind of unsettling to me because the whole time I was like, where's the giant? Mickey, look out! And he's just walking around. I've never finished that episode. If anyone remembers the show Kipper, I don't think there's anything that scared me in it, but it was weird, right? There's a part I remember where someone goes up into some pink clouds and just walks around. Another where they ride a roller coaster and there's a door with a dragon or something. I only saw that show like once. Martha Speaks, one more PBS Kids show we're gonna have to mention. This one was about a dog who ate some alphabet soup and then starts to talk. She, her owner, their friends get up to shenanigans and learn some new vocabulary in the process. I thought it was pretty fun, but they would have some pretty spooky episodes. First was the one with the pickles. So yeah, Martha watches a movie where people turn into pickles, or the girl watches the movie. There's this scene near the end, I think, where people turn into pickles. There's also one where there's pickle people in the basement. Didn't make me run out of the room, but it was pretty unnerving. There was also the episode, if anybody remembers, with the ghost lady who shows up in the portrait at the end when they go into the haunted house. When I was little, I had a ton of those Winnie the Pooh straight-to-DVD movies. I was in tune with the whole cinematic universe they had going on. The Tigger movie, the Piglet movie, the Heffalump movie, Springtime with Roo. I loved all of them. So one time I was at the hospital for some mouth surgery thing. I ended up watching Pooh's Grand Adventure from 1997 on the TV there, and we had to turn it off at the part where the bees showed up. I don't know what it was, but yeah, those gosh darn bees. I looked the movie up now, and overall, it looks a lot more dreary than your average Pooh movie. There's probably a reason why I never saw this one again. While we're on the subject of Disney, let's just do some more quick mentions of things that I would only see a bit of. The trailer for the movie Enchanted, where she falls down the hole, yeah, that was playing on a Redbox at Stop and Shop one time, and the one Wall-E short where it looks like Cockroach dies. No need to explain why I thought those two things were scary to 4-year-old me. I think we've established what I was like. Pixar movies actually had a lot of freaky stuff in them. The scene in Toy Story 2 where the creepy old guy fixes up Woody, the one-man band short from the Cars DVD for some reason. The first movie I saw in theaters was Up, and we had to leave because it got too intense. Again, with the whole characters being in peril thing. PSA, do not take your 4-year-olds to the movies. Toy Story 3 had that monkey. I don't know what they were thinking with that. I was older when we saw that in the theater, but we still had to leave because yeah, I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys felt the same about this thing. And while we're on the topic of monkeys, specifically mechanical chimps, I've got a physical childhood trauma story for all of you. So growing up, we never had Costco or Sam's Club. Our equivalent to those stores is something called BJ's, which is only really in the Northeast United States. It's a big warehouse where you buy things in bulk. Back then they had these little kiosks with these electronic toys from this company called Wowie. You guys probably know them for Robo Sapien and that one dinosaur thing. So yeah, they made robot toys. One of these I remember seeing was a chimpanzee head that you'd control with a little remote. Wowie, a live chimpanzee. It had sound and vision sensors too, so this thing would look over at you if you walked by it. Imagine being a little kid going to BJ's to get groceries, and you go down the aisle and see this uncanny looking ape turning its head around and making noise. It was just so off-putting, like why was this a product you could buy at BJ's of all places? I remember I'd also get scared of the Halloween animatronics they'd put up around then, but this was never near those. It was always in that one corner between the cleaning supplies and the lawn furniture. They even had this little commercial that would play in it where like lightning strikes in the background. I can't find any pictures of this thing in a store, but it was in a glass case with a TV behind it. I also couldn't find the video that played on the TV, but what I'm remembering is probably this other commercial. Our Robo-Chimp friend could have also appeared at Radio Shack or GameStop too, because I do have a very distant memory of seeing it at a mall too. While I don't know if that thing was at a mall, I do remember another thing that would always creep me out whenever we went to our local mall. Now this I remember from maybe the mid-2000s, like 2006 or 7. It was right next to a Hot Topic, Spencer's, or Newberry Comics. some edgy store. It was this life-size statue of Freddy Krueger from A Nightmare on Elm Street. Obviously, I didn't know who that was, but I still was scared of it. Freddy Krueger's face is obviously kinda creepy, no matter what setting or context. This is another one I can't really find on Google Images or anything. I remember it being stationary and made of pretty high quality material maybe, so I don't think it was like a Halloween animatronic. But you never know. It was so long ago, to the point where I remember I was in a stroller when I saw it for the first time, so I think it's really weird when you're little and you see characters for the first time, then recognize them later in life. Like Freddy, I remember the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, Scooby-Doo, Dilbert. Like, I'd see random stuff and be like, oh, that's a character from a thing that people know. I don't know it, but apparently people do. Like, sometimes I'd think that about stuff and those characters would never show up again. I had this puzzle when I was little, and there was this character on it who was a trash can, but he was folding his arms epic style, and he had like a cool jacket. I remember thinking, oh, he's from a cartoon. And no, for all I know, that character only existed on that puzzle, and I can't find him. So yeah, if we're keeping score, that's 3 pieces of possible lost media in this video. Why don't we add on a 4th? This is our last location-based childhood scare. There was this science center place my family would go to a lot. Not saying the name because I don't want to dox myself. It was a lot of fun. They had all these exhibits, little activities, a bunch of live animals you could see, among other things. They even had a planetarium that you could see little movies in. It was a big dome you'd be inside of, and the thing would be projected onto the dome. People would use it for presentations about space, but I just remember using it for when they'd screen episodes of Peep in the Big Wide World. There was one time we saw some non-Peep media in there, and it's something I'd never forget. It was a CGI movie about space with a POV of these 2 kids. They go in their backyard and build a rocket ship, and presumably they learn about the solar system and things like that. I didn't see the whole thing because I was so scared we had to leave. The kids build a rocket ship out of cardboard, and they have this book about space. The book starts like pulsating, and they open up the book, and this weird yellow head popped out. In my memory, it kind of looked like the guy from Brain Age, but with a mustache and yellow skin. As soon as he showed up, I started crying and we had to leave. It's still in the back of my mind to this day. What movie was that? Was the guy really scary, or was I just little? It's like my personal Clockman. But you know what? Just like Clockman, it was found. Yeah, that's right. The Science Center Yellow Guy movie was actually a movie called Secret of the Cardboard Rocket by Clark Planetarium Productions. You can just go and watch it for free on the company's website. Yep, that's the guy. He's a little less yellow than I remembered, but that's him. There are a few features about him I don't remember, like the eyebrows and the Jimmy Neutron hair. The early 2000s CG is a little weird by itself, but having it be blown up on a giant screen over your head, I can understand how it scared me. Now, looking at it in the 2020s, and on a relatively small computer screen, this guy's not scary. He's just a little uggo, but he's not scary. And thankfully, this isn't lost media. It's existed for a while. I actually just posted this to r/tip of my tongue on Reddit, and somebody found it within a few days. Shout out to u/PolarePolari for doing some research into this. Now, let's move on to video games. I grew up in the late 2000s, so I had a Wii. That's gotta be like one of Newton's laws or something. Our family had most of those Wii branded games, Wii Fit, Wii Sports, Wii Play, and for the most part they were all fun. Except for a few minigames that, guess what? In this childhood trauma video, they scared me. Say what you want about Wii Fit. It didn't tell little 8-year-olds that they were overweight for no reason, but besides the weird use of the balance board for that, it's pretty underrated. Games like Hula Hoop, Ski Jump, and running were a lot of fun for what they were. Plus, this was the first appearance of the Me Dogs. You can't forget those guys. There was this one game in Wii Fit where you'd roll around with your face on a ball. I think I remember a game over screen where the Me ball falls off the thing and you see its sad face. I remember being scared at this game, maybe just when you fall off. I can't really find any footage of a cutscene like that online. There was this other game where you'd walk on a tightrope, which I never wanted to do because, you know, what if I fall off on the Wii? Besides those, I did enjoy Wii Fit, obviously, and would keep playing the minigames I did like until I unlocked more. One of the last ones I got to was called Lotus Focus. In this one, you try to sit still for as long as possible. You have this black room with a candle, and little things go by. Really weird compared to a lot of the games that have colorful backgrounds and actual things going on. You're just supposed to sit there and look at this black screen with these ambient sounds. But if you mess up...
Cut!
That scared me so much. Forget Five Nights at Freddy's, this is the video game jump scare right here. Apparently, being scared by this game wasn't a unique experience. I went to YouTube to look up footage of the game, and all the comments say pretty much the same thing about the game. This one sums it up perfectly. 6 years old, playing Wii Fit, decided to play Lotus Focus, not knowing what the heck it is. Begin the session. Started to get kinda fidgety, when suddenly, CUT! Scared the absolute crap out of me. Now let's move on to Wii Play. This is one I enjoyed a little less than Wii Fit. They were okay at best. Yes, even the tank one that a lot of people love. Now what we're talking about here is the Hit the Target game. It was okay till the UFO showed up. At this point in my Wii gaming career, I'd gotten pretty attached to my Miis, and I could not handle the way they ran around and got sucked up by these UFOs. It was just a little unsettling because all the other games are pretty stress-free, but now I was in charge of saving these guys' lives. Here's one from when I was a bit older. Wizards of Waverly Plays. This was a sitcom on Disney Channel that, like the name suggests, was about wizards. It starred a young Selena Gomez and borrowed a lot from popular media at the time. Harry Potter, Twilight, etc. Besides witches and wizards, they'd incorporate other Halloween monsters into the show. Vampires, werewolves, and even a mummy. During this one big event episode, where the characters go on an epic quest to find this vampire girl, they have to fight said mummy. I remember there was some scene in this episode that freaked me out, but I don't remember which one. It's either the part where the mummy disintegrates, or when the vampire turns into an old lady, both with some pretty classic 2010 TV special effects. I'm gonna guess it was one, but my mind melded the two together because I remember the mummy unwrapping thing being more of a big deal. Like there were effects of him spinning around, or his face was like melting or something. It's a vague memory compared to a lot of the other stuff I've mentioned here. Now, I want to end the video with a childhood story that isn't really traumatic, but has that same feel. So it's been established that I liked Curious George, and I had a ton of DVDs. And at the start, sometimes, there'd be trailers for the Land Before Time movies. Not the original that everybody loves, you know, all the sequels that are really colorful, where they're all singing and stuff, and learning about sharing, or whatever. So I see the trailers for those, right. Later I was at the library, and we were in the kids section, and I wanted to check out The Land Before Time, 1988, because I had seen the trailers for these bright, bubbly kiddie movies that looked like basically Winnie the Pooh but with dinosaurs. And with that, I put in the DVD of the original, and we had to turn it off. It was so boring. To me, it was all dark and muddy and slow and nothing happens. I guess that really says something about kids' attention spans these days. The only scene I remember is when Littlefoot and Sarah are hanging out, but then Daddy Tops comes in, that's his canon name, and tells her off. Now in hindsight, The Land Before Time is probably a movie that would have messed with me if I had seen it at a young age, what with the scary T-Rex and Littlefoot's mom dying. I'm glad I didn't like it. I haven't seen it at all since then, and it's probably a good watch. Same with all those other Don Bluth movies from the 80s. I remember I tried to watch Secret of NIMH when I was young, and I thought that one was boring too. I guess those two movies could make a good double feature. So that's part one of my childhood trauma. If you think any of these are lame, or that I'm lame for getting scared, that's fine. All this was when I was like 4. When you're that little, a lot of stuff can get to you. As I write this, I feel like this was only an appetizer for things to come. Part 2 gets a lot weirder with the media that scared me, and there are a lot of things that I know were frightening to other people that I just have to mention. So stay tuned until then. Why not hit that magic little subscribe button? And the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any new uploads. Follow me on my socials, linked in the description. And, before we end the video for good, here's a special shout out to my Yak2 supporters from Patreon. Knife Girl, The Blazing Pegasus, Technicolor, Jack Getchman, Paisley, Trixie Best, No, Yak Best, Olive, SR Nano, Allison Madden, Alex Kincaid, Johnny Punchfist, A Kawaii Dragon, Keen Crier, Cascadiark, Bad Bessie, Damian, Marshmallow, and Goose Nerd. I can't think of a better outro, so until next time, goodbye.